Welcome. High Vibe Art and Soul with Catherine, a podcast to explore higher visions. Reach out and connect with wisdom seekers and wisdom speakers. No medical advice is being offered on any of these podcasts. If you require medical advice, please seek your healthcare practitioner. We'll do some education, some philosophy, perhaps a little political discussion and social issues, raising vibes, raising consciousness, expanding visions, expanding awareness, exploring art and why we need to, love to, desire to create art in all its forms, connecting mind, body, and spirit as we dig deep to reveal diamonds from life's journey. Join me, Catherine Whalen-Costin, as I share my insights, queries, and also delightful guests whenever possible to help me explore higher visions. If you're curious about future guests and topics, please go to the website, ClarityWhisperArtandSoul.com, where you will find my art store featuring energy-infused original paintings you can purchase, merchandise with prints from my latest art, my blog, and of course, my new ebook, just being released in 2022, Permission to Breathe, a memoir, sacred journey mining the depths of grief and trauma to unearth the gems beneath. As I'm releasing this new book in 2022, I will be exploring more about grief, trauma, and insights I've gained during the course of this podcast series. Let's do it. Let's get into this show right now. And welcome to another High Vibe Art and Soul with Catherine. Today we're going to talk about self-esteem, something that is, we have a lot of slogans, we have a lot of cliches, we have a lot of affirmations on self-esteem. And I wanted to dig a little deeper on what that is all about, and when you are a creative, how that can really either support you in exploring your creative talents, your creative gifts, which I think we all have. How does self-esteem play into that? What's the difference between someone who has a great deal of talent or gifts and they never show them to the world, and a person who just maybe has mediocre talent or gifts and thrives in business, in the world, in their lives, in financially, emotionally, in their sense of well-being? So what happens there? How do certain people end up with this incredible positive understanding of their place in the world? Where do they get the sense that taking up space wherever they are, wherever they go, is a given? That they're meant to be wherever they are? And why do some other people feel like they're intruding? They need to be invited. They need to be given praise all the time to continue on their path. They may have passion, they may have desire, but they may not know how to bring that out into the world. So we're going to talk about self-esteem. We're going to talk about it in relation to creative expression, and because that's really what humans really have an innate desire to create, to build something, to make a difference in the world, to connect with other people. So if this is for you, stay tuned, and we are going to get into some exploration. One of the things that I find remarkable is that we're at a time in 2022 where this is not new. We have social media, we have a lot of self-help programs, and there's a trend with memes of constantly building people up. If people don't like you, there's usually a tell them to get lost kind of attitude. Okay. I just see this trend. A lot of it is, in my perception, rather vulgar, rather, it's hasn't really evolved to a full understanding. And I love the big picture as well as the little picture. I love looking at the consequences of these different behaviors that we share as a collective, especially in the Western culture, where social media is just so prevalent. And when I listen to people say a very common saying, which is, it's none of my business what other people think of me. And think about that for a second. It's none of my business what other people think of me. Well, I understand the theory behind that quote. I don't know who was the original person to say that. It takes a very confident person to say that they are not going to be affected by what other people think of them. When you're in business, you have to make it your business to care about what other people think of you and your work. It is not possible to have a business and not care about what other people think about your product, about you, about the way you conduct yourself, the way you present yourself, because all of those things are going to influence whether they do business with you. And I did a show previously on Let's Get Real, chatting with Catherine about social media and about the do's and don'ts for business people. You know, what kinds of things, if you're wanting to present yourself as a confident person who's offering a self-help course, let's say, or some kind of healing practice, or you want to offer your services, maybe it's on technical things, and you want people to connect with you and hire you, and you have a portion of your social media presence that is all about the business and, saying things that, please buy my product. Whether you're saying it in those words or you're just advertising yourself. And those people who you're advertising to, some of them are also friends, air quotes here, friends on your other social media platforms. Your whole presence, public presence, is going to be taken into account. So if you have that going on, and then on the other hand, you have, I just broke up with my boyfriend, my husband, my wife, complaining, whining, maybe even your issues may be really important. But when you're putting your, what we used to call, when you put your dirty laundry out on the line, people are going to see it. And they're going to make judgments, which we all do when we are deciding on who to do business with. And those judgments, we kind of try to tell ourselves we shouldn't be judging anyone. It's a natural part of being human. We can call it judging, you can call it discernment, call it what you like, but we do it all the time. How do you decide where you want to invest your money? Because that saying, we vote with our money, is true in politics. It's also true in business, in our day-to-day. Where do we invest? Where do we send our children to school? Where do we, what sports teams do we support? What celebrities do we buy tickets to see their shows? Where do we put our money? When we want an accountant, there's got to be a sense of trust and understanding. So, for example, I'm going to hire an accountant, and I've been listening to their social media, and they're telling me things like, they don't have enough money, and they're, in debt, and they're struggling, and they're complaining about this and that. And then on the other hand, they have an advertisement saying, I can show you how to be a millionaire in X number of days. So these things are really important to not be expressing two different images of yourself. We all have a private life. We all have worries and struggles and so forth. But public presence, which social media is, whether you have a private page or you don't, you have a private page, you're still going to have people who you interact with. And are they going to refer you? Are you offering a service that people are saying, oh, good for you, but on the other hand, they have no intentions of ever referring you to their friends, even though, we hear about it all the time. Well, why don't you buy from your friends or family? Well, chances are it's because you know more about that person's business than you would a stranger, because they've aired it publicly. So think about that. If you're wanting to interact anywhere in the world, the idea of that we don't care about what other people think of us is, I don't think it's the truth. I think it's an interesting concept, but we don't live alone in society. And, if you live in the bush by yourself and the only other life forms you're interacting with are nature and animals, well, their opinions of you maybe don't matter. It's, if you look delicious, that might matter. But I just think that it's an interesting thing that I might say if I was attempting to shrug off hurtful things that people might say about me. But when you listen to the affirmation, it's not about just hurtful things. It's about anything. That's the point of it. It's other people's opinions are not my business. Other people's opinions about me are not my business. And I see it as partially true in that if someone else thinks that you shouldn't be doing something, or you should be doing something, or you could be doing something better, or that kind of thing, or they don't like what you're doing. So you've got friends or family who say, you shouldn't be doing this particular kind of work, or you're not a good artist, or you are a great artist, or whatever they're saying. Those kinds of things, I understand. They feed the ego, whether it's in fear or in, praise or whatever. But to suggest that other people's opinions aren't our business is to cut ourselves off from what is truly happening in the interactions between people. It matters to me. It is my business what people think of my art. It matters to me how people feel about my writing or my podcasts. It matters to me. I do care about what other people say. If I have a whole lot of people that were saying something negative, and I have a whole lot of people that are saying something positive, I can balance it out. But to suggest that I don't care, I just don't think that that's really true. And, you could feel free to, write a comment and let me know what you think. Maybe I've interpreted it incorrectly. But for me, I think it isn't about allowing other people's opinions or judgments of me to be the basis that I define myself. That I would agree with. It's my job to define myself according to my values, to what will work for me, what does work for me. So, if you, there's comedians out there who make a living being insulting and vulgar, and there are people who enjoy that interaction, and I don't. I wouldn't pay money to see a show like that, because it doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't feel good in my body. I like high vibration entertainment. I don't need to sit and watch someone entertain me by tearing down someone else. And to be honest, that's in part what I see has went from there. Those used to be comedy shows or certain genres that you could select. But today we're seeing a lot of that on our mainstream of television for entertainment. We're seeing it in movies. We're seeing it in our news, in our politicians, on social media. Politicians that are using very base, kinds of insults about their opponents, which are not adding to the elevation of social harmony in any way. As far as I can see, they're very low vibration, very low. I mean, when you look at the vibration of the energy of words, of actions that are, fear-based and hate-based and destructive, those are all really low vibrations. Whereas creating and building and laughter and love and joy and appreciation, those are much higher on that scale of energy. And that's what I would seek to bring into the world through my work. But if you are looking at embarking on a business, or you're already in business and you're noticing that, things aren't going the way the affirmations suggest, if I don't care about what other people think of me, maybe take a look at that. Some of these affirmations which become very popular can't come from someone's personal experience. So if you are trying to, wipe the poop off your shoes because you've been in an abusive situation where people have put you down, that kind of an affirmation is kind of reminds you that their opinions, their slurs against you are not of your concern. And on the other hand, being a people pleaser is also the other side of that coin, where you're living for praise. Was my experience, was that I felt when I was growing up, my whole purpose of being here was to be useful. That's where my survival came in. So getting some praise was survival. Not getting it meant I had to do more. I had to keep doing more and more and more. So some of these things that we are being treated to as, self-help or affirmations to build people up, don't take into account all those facets. We are so much more complicated than we make it sound. It's, it cannot be contained in a meme. It's important to, when you see something like that, rather than just like or share or whatever, think about it. Think about, what does this really feel like for me? Am I really believing that? Is that helpful? So when we look at self-esteem, the question is, how is it that some people do have that? And it's interesting because I think there's a lot more exploration right now as we're moving into higher frequency energy, more light on the planet, as a lot of people following astrology and spiritual path, metaphysical understandings, quantum physics, you name it. There's a lot of talk about this shift happening on the planet, where the very low energy stuff is just not being fed anymore. It's not going to thrive. It's dying. It's on life support. And that's what I feel is being played out on the social media and in a lot of our personal interactions. A lot of it is that old energy looking for, like a parasite, looking for a host, looking for someone to feed it. If we don't feed it, it will die. And so when I look at the creative process, that for the most part, we all have a desire to, I think creating is a real human desire. It's not, and some people say, oh, well, I have no desire to paint or sew or do anything like that. But creating isn't just specific to the arts. It's not a matter of doing something that you have to sell. Being creative is part of our lives. The way you fashion your clothes, the way you fashion your home, the way you display the things you love, the car you drive, the way you do your work, whatever your work might be. We are being creative. And some people are more creative in a way that they can share the product. Like I can be creative in designing and fashioning my home, but I'm not selling that to other people necessarily. Although, that's sometimes how it starts for some people in business. They're really good at seeing, contrast and where to put furniture and where to hang pictures and all that kind of thing. And then they can share it. So that's a creative energy. Being creative is a way to allow our inner vision to be expressed in the world. And that is what I find with my art. When I, take a blank canvas and you look at it and there's nothing there. And a few hours later, perhaps, maybe a few days, something comes to life. Something that did not exist before now exists. And that is a very different energy and a very different mindset than destroying something. Destroying something can, if you're demolishing something for the sake of you need that space because you're going to create something new, then it feels a little different. But if you're just destroying, breaking things down, breaking people down for the sake of elevating yourself more than anything, then that is very low energy. So self-esteem, we come into this world brand new, baby, we forget where we came from. We forget we're spirit. We're so much more than our physical bodies. But we have kind of a part of our evolution. We have parents, and those parents are going to guide us through those very helpless years. And in that process, we get feedback. The world, our environment, gives us feedback. I mean, that is more than anything, is where I think we learn. Our environment teaches us. And animals learn from their parents. They don't have the same kind of learning, but they have to learn how to survive, right? And so it's passed on. So when you're a small child and you have these adults taking care of you, and in that first 7 years where your subconscious is just taking everything in like a sponge, hearing everything that is said, whether it's to you or around you, you're taking all that in. Your self-esteem is being developed. This is when you start, to walk or to crawl. And you have a parent or a caregiver who's saying, look at you, you didn't do that yesterday and now you're doing it. Wow, celebrate, blah, blah, blah. And a child who grows up with that, I love you, you're beautiful, you're, so creative, you're so clever, look at you, you figured that out. Do you need help? Do you not need help? So they can learn to interact with the world. But there's a lot of people who didn't grow up with those simple self-esteem building tools. And if the parents were busy, they were absent, they weren't, or they had caregivers who had low self-esteem themselves, very often that transfers. So, why do you always do things wrong? Why did you break that thing? Why did you spill that milk? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? I mean, how many times children hear that? And they begin to think there is something wrong with them, that they should be able to do it better, which is, we know, if you think about it logically, it isn't logical that a child should know how to do certain things. And, I've had people had this discussion. I used to teach preschool, and there were people who at times suggested that their child should know how to do certain things by now. And this is not true. We all learn at a different pace. So building self-esteem it's a process. Every time you do something, you gain that. But if you don't have anyone to mirror that back to you, to say to you, good for you, it is hard to do that for yourself. It is very hard to do that for yourself. I speak from personal experiences that most of my life, I wanted to do something. I had to figure it out for myself. And then, because the things I was doing, a lot of things I was doing, there wasn't anyone around me who knew what I was doing or understood it. So I didn't get a lot of, wow, that's amazing that you figured that out, or, you know how to do that, or how beautiful that Instead, it was kind of said, oh, well, of course you know how to do that, of course. So there was no celebration. It was just expected. And the more that happened, the lower my self-esteem got, because I couldn't seem to get any feedback. It's not about seeking praise. Please, please tell me I'm good enough. Although that can be part of it, but it is part of that whole experience of your environment. If your environment doesn't give you any feedback to say that what you're doing is worthwhile, what you're creating is new and beautiful and wonderful, and that you are taking up space, yes, and that space is amazing. You don't have that. And we see today a lot of affirmations saying to tell yourself, look yourself in the eye and say that, I'm beautiful, I love myself, I'm amazing, I'm doing these wonderful things. And I think that's wonderful because self-love is important. But the problem is there can be a disconnect in the brain, because it's like, it feels like the ego is saying that, and there's no evidence beyond the mirror to say that. So how do you know that what you're doing does make a difference if no one tells you? How do you know that your craft, your creative expression is amazing? How do you know that? We have very limited, without conversation, without consideration, without compensation, we are in a vacuum, and it's just us inside that little world. So you go to work and you've been asked to do a certain job, and you do it, and you do it well, and you get your pay, and that's your reward. And there have been studies done about this, and one of the things is money isn't everything. Yes, you need to be compensated for your time, for your effort, for what you put out, because that's what we exchange on this planet for goods and services, right? Money is energy, and it's what we're using in 2022 on the planet, and everyone needs to have a supply of money to exchange for food and lodging, shelter, and so forth. And so when you don't have that money, when you're not compensated for your contributions, or you're not fairly compensated, your sense of self-worth is diminished. I mean, people who are living on the streets, who don't have a house, who don't have a place to have a shower, to at the end of the day relax and put their feet up, don't have food in their belly, are asking the world to say, do you see me? Am I worthy of even a daily bread? Am I worthy? Am I contributing anything? And of course, we know they are. Everyone is contributing. Everyone has a piece of the puzzle. But the problem is, we, in this very hustle bustle kind of world, we make a lot of assumptions that, people can give to themselves certain things, self-esteem. And I'm here to say, I don't necessarily believe that. I know, yes, some people do seem to have a lot of self-esteem. And yet, I do believe they were given certain feedback from their childhood, from their family. Even one person in a chaotic situation, chaotic family, one teacher, one neighbor, one person that sees you and says, hey, I see you. You're amazing. That can be a seed that then you can grow that seed. But if you don't hear that, you don't feel that, then it's very difficult to build that self-esteem yourself. So, and that's what a lot of coaches, why so many coaches are doing the work they're doing today, because we're trying to build up the broken people from broken childhoods who didn't get that, who don't understand. We're really seeing a lot of mixed messages on this. When you try to break free of those old programs of just being a producer consumer, and you actually want to have a vision brought forward through your creativity, you know there's solutions, there's ways to do things better, there's ways to communicate in a better way, in a higher vibration way, and you're attempting to do that. If you don't have people to give you some feedback to help validate you, I think that's the key. It's not about just getting praise, it's validation. What you're doing and you being on this planet is a gift, and I appreciate that you're here. That's important. So I just wanted to share a few insights on this. The affirmations are great. We need more. We need to go deeper in that. And I can tell you from being on my healing journey for many, many years, it's layer by layer. You think you should have figured it out by now, and something else comes up, and you just have to look at it and examine it, because life on planet Earth is complicated. But contrary to what, many will say, the goal here is not to accumulate the most toys or the most money. Having money is important because that's how we exchange, energy with other people. If I want to go and buy food, I need to have something to give the store clerk. If I want to buy someone else's artwork, I need to be able to honor them and to appreciate them and pay them the price they're asking for that work. Or if I want to read a book, I have to understand the person put those words on pages. They formed that thought, that shared that experience, that insight, that wisdom, whatever it is. It took time, took effort, took insight, took skill, and to put it all together into a book. The baker that's offering their goods. These things all take money. So in order for me to show that I appreciate that gift, that thing I desire, I have to have money to exchange. So the idea that we can live on this planet without money is kind of a interesting thing. You call it whatever you want. It's an exchange of energy, just like love. And it represents things. And a person who has very low self-esteem doesn't value their contributions in the world. And building that up takes time. It's not something that you can just turn it on with an affirmation. I am beautiful, I am smart, I am successful, so forth. Because your body, your mind, they don't believe it. You've had evidence showing you otherwise. So you have to find other ways to connect with people and surround yourself with people who can see you authentically. Because it does matter what other people think of me. It does matter. That is just the truth. It matters. It's not the thing that should stop me or prevent me from living my best life because other people don't approve of it. I would say looking for other people's approval is where we can often go wrong for us. Seeking someone else's approval is not helpful. You have to approve of your own self and your actions and your dreams. You approve them. I approve that plan. I approve that creativity, take ownership. I love that. I approve of that. You don't have to say that out loud, but I approve of myself. It's not that I don't care what other people think, because if I don't, then, I can make all the paintings I want, but if I'm the only one who loves them, then they're for my own personal use. But if I'm interested in selling them and sharing that art, then I'm going to care about what other people think. And I'm going to care if they're saying good things to their friends about my work. This is important. That is connection. That's, good communication. And so I encourage you to think about how you're representing yourself online, in your social media, in your business. Think about how you're presenting yourself. And if you're, sharing a lot of personal information that is in conflict with the image that you're trying to present, then maybe don't do it. Maybe don't share those kinds of things. It's important to have friends, good friends that you can discuss things with, not dump all your garbage on. If you need that, you really do need to hire a therapist to help you with those kinds of things, to have somebody who is not a part of your daily life that can help you to navigate that water, which can be really rough sometimes and painful. But just blurting it out on social media that you're having a bad day and that life is terrible and it really sucks, and then at the same time trying to say, and here I have a program that you can buy or a product that you can look terrific and feel fantastic and life is great. People are not going to buy it. And even if they don't, aren't your personal friend and you think, oh no, only my family sees that. Well, your family is also a potential customer. There are also people that are going to either refer you or not refer you. So it's really important to do our own work. I'm not saying this so that you can, think, oh, I have to be perfect before I can get out there in the world. Because I have struggled with that, let me tell you. And you can't be. You're not going to be. That part I understand. That kind of perfection is where you don't care whether other people expect you to be perfect or not. Because you are perfect, but not in a human mold kind of way. You're perfectly unique. And so I really want to, my intention here is to share that being creative takes courage, and building your own self-esteem also sometimes involves knowing how to help build other people's. So the more you say to other people, wow, you're amazing, that's great, I love the way you think, I love the way you dress, I love the way you have the initiative to find solutions to problems, all those kinds of things. The more you're saying that to other people, they begin to, one, it helps their self-esteem, but also they'll look at you in a different way. And that helps build your self-esteem. Everything is interactive, there's give and receive. It's not just give and take. I really don't like that saying. I prefer give and receive, because when I give, I always receive something, and it may not be something from the person I gave to, but there is a reciprocal energy. So those are my main points for today's podcast, and to just get this ball rolling. Like I mentioned before, I am going to be interviewing different people. Interview is maybe not quite the right word, but it's having discussions with others who are experts in their field, in what they're doing, to talk about some of these issues, like self-esteem, like beyond the affirmations, like really stepping into the creativity, because I do believe that the purpose of our evolution to find a better way to live on planet Earth in harmony with her is going to require a lot of creativity, a lot of breaking the molds from the old way of doing things and moving into new. And we're not going to do that if we're stuck in fear, if we hate everyone around us, and we hate the planet, and we hate what's going on in the world, or we're afraid of it. We're not going to have that creative energy and vision. My creativity comes to me through my meditation, where I get quiet and I allow spirit to move through me, to move that energy. If I'm stuck in I have so many bills and I have so much problem, blah, 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 and my body hurts and so forth, or, nobody likes my work, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to create anything worthwhile, not for me, not for anyone else. So if we're going to be looking at new inventions, new ways to be on the planet, new ways to interact, we have to look at the things that are not working for us, the very low vibration stuff, and stop feeding it. Stop feeding it. Being aware that, yep, it's there and that's the way I used to do things, and I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just choosing not to do it. I'm choosing something different. Sometimes better is not the word that we even are looking for. It's just different. It's just different way of being on the planet and interacting with other people. So I hope you found some of this helpful, not too rambly, and just give you some insight on where we're going. I know that I have several people lined up already who want to be guests on the show for deeper discussion, and I love doing that. I love sharing other people's points of view and questioning and going deeper into it. So if you happen to be a person who wants to talk about some of these empowering ways we can look at empowering ourselves to take us further forward in creating the world we want to live in, the world we can live in, in harmony, in peace on the planet. And, you have a vision, you have products, you have services, you have ways of exploring, you have knowledge, trauma, grief, all of those kinds of things that can be hurdles. I would love to talk to you. I would love for you to go to the website, ClarityWhisperArtandSoul.com, go to the contact page and send me a message telling me that you'd be interested in being a guest. And I will need your bio and headshot to put on the website once we decide that it's a fit, and we can set up a time. So I just really appreciate your being here with me and being willing to explore a little beyond a soundbite. Thanks so much. Until next time, take care. Thank you so much for joining me to explore and expand our consciousness and our awareness of life on planet Earth. It's been a pleasure. If you want more information on guests, on the book, Permission to Breathe, on my blog, on my art, go to ClarityWhisperArtandSoul.com. All the social media links are there. And of course, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, it's very possible that I would love, love, love you to subscribe and to share and to like and to comment, because hearing back from you is what helps me to know where to go with the shows, what's inspiring you, what's intriguing for you. Thanks so much and have a wonderful, wonderful week. Take care.